Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Backstage Bikini podcast with your hosts, Grace and Jade. And for today's episode, guys, it's going to be a little bit different than usual, quite emotional, quite raw, but something that I felt deserved an episode in itself, because of what's to come, I guess. A little bit nervous, so please be patient with me. This podcast is my baby, and
Mhm.
this has been a very, very difficult decision for me to make. And obviously, Jade and I are really, really close friends, and we've been speaking about this the last couple of weeks, but I wanted to share it all with you guys on here. And that is that I will no longer be co-host of the Backstage Bikini podcast. And it breaks my heart saying that. As I said, it has been an incredibly, incredibly difficult decision to make. And probably, if I'm going to be truthfully honest, not one that just came in a week. It's been over the course of the year, which I'll go into in a little bit of depth, but it just feels like the right step for me right now. Most of you might know, you may or may not know that I went through quite a big relationship ending around this time last year, and that kind of changed just me as a person for the better in a lot of ways. Breakups are never easy. You kind of,
Hell
I think
no.
initially it's hard, but you understand that I think everything does happen for a reason and the universe has your back and there's always a plan. And while when that relationship ended, it felt like the hardest thing in the world, because I didn't know where I was going, who I was, where I was going to live. It turned out to be the absolute best thing for me. And a year on, I can say that I'm in a totally different headspace. So anybody going through relationship
Hang
breakdowns,
on in.
just know that it does get better. And what's hard now won't be hard in a few months or a year's time. But ultimately, that relationship did change a lot for me. Um, I decided early this year that I was not going to be competing anymore. And a lot of other different things happened, moving countries, changing my training styles up until recently, which I will go into in a little bit more detail. But unfortunately, the drive or the passion for bodybuilding has just been getting less and less as the year went on. And we speak about identity all the time in
Mm.
podcasts and trying to break away from being a very, very strict competitor in your off seasons and stuff like that. But I knew that I wasn't going to compete anymore, but I was still very much holding on to parts of my life, the way I was training, the content that I was consuming, the way I was eating, the heavy focus on my body and physique goals, the people that I was surrounding myself with as well,
Mhm.
and also where I was living. I made a decision to move back to Manchester this year, um, to almost, I suppose, bring myself back to that community. But there was something this year, for a few months that just it wasn't sitting right. The training wasn't sitting right, the way I was eating, where I was living. And slowly but surely as the years gone on, I've just changed and grown and realized a lot of things. And healing, I'm not going to make this into a therapy session,
It's
but healing
true.
does take
It's
time.
true.
It
Yeah.
absolutely does take time. And
Yeah.
I've been healing from a lot of things this year. I started competing in 2019, same year as Jade, and I
Mm.
spent the guts of 3, 4 years incredibly invested in the industry. I do not regret it. It massively, massively fulfilled me at the time. I was also in a relationship with somebody who was involved in the industry, and it consumed a lot of us, and I loved it at the time. But it just no longer serves me, I guess, that way of life with the relationship ending and a lot of other things, values, family, and even just single life and moving home and just growing up, I guess. I think we forget that it's okay to just like part way with things as we grow
Yeah.
up.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent,
It's
but
not, no, no, it's
the
all valid. It's all valid. I think it's so important to recognize that that happens over time, though. Like we were talking about it before we actually jumped on the podcast. Like, it's okay for you to outgrow things, people, situations, environments. Like, I think it's very easy to become attached to something, stay attached to something
Mhm.
because it's familiar, because change is awful. Nobody likes change, like,
Yeah.
let's face it. It's so easy to stay attached to something because it's familiar, comfortable, you enjoy it, you still seek or you still get something from it. But I think the bravery in recognizing where that's not where it used to be.
Mhm.
And that's across the board, Grace. It's not just with this podcast and this
100%.
platform, like across the board, you've had to strip yourself bare,
Mhm.
for want of a
I
better
think
phrase.
bodybuilders, like you said, like change hard, and bodybuilders do not like change. And
No, no.
when you're so invested in this industry and competing, like everything is routine. You know,
Hmm.
the time you wake up, the things that you eat, the things that you consume on social media, like all of it is very much the same.
Yeah.
And when I initially made the step away from competing, that was extremely difficult time. I went
Hmm.
back working with Jake for a
Hmm.
few months this year, but none of it felt right. Even
No.
though in my head, these are the things that I thought I needed to do to keep me in the game, to keep me motivated,
Hmm.
to keep my business going, and to just even feel better myself. Like I was latching on to that life because it was
Yeah.
familiar, it was comfortable. I
Mm.
had got results before, and breaking away into something totally different, you know, moving home, surrounded by different people, living life, like all of that scared me. And I was stopping that, I suppose, authenticity coming through and
Hmm.
evolving into the person that I really, really wanted and need to be. So I
Hmm.
was holding on to that. And I've done a lot of therapy. And there's one thing that I've learned a lot is listening to my gut.
Hmm.
And when something doesn't feel right, I got a lot of questions when I moved back from Manchester. Why this? Why that? And the
Hmm.
truth is that being there and living the way I was living, I'm not saying it had to be that way, but it was the
Hmm.
mindset that I was in when I was there, wasn't sitting right with me, in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, stopped working with Jake. That wasn't sitting right with me. There was just a lot of things that were just sucking so much life out of me. And I
Hmm.
think it's really important to recognize like what are the things that genuinely fill your cup.
Hmm. Hmm.
We don't always know that, and that's why I think it's important to be like self-aware. But I've taken a good year to understand, okay, what is actually filling my cup and what's
Hmm.
taking away from it.
Hmm.
And the more I've done this, the more I've done the podcast, you know, the longer I train, everything else, I'm starting to put pieces together of, okay, right, this is making me feel really, really good. This is making me feel
Hmm.
like Grace and the person that
Hmm.
I want to be, and this is not.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just taken me a while to do that, but I feel like the last couple of months since I moved back to Ireland, it's given me really, really good opportunity. I think being around family has massively helped as well. I changed up my training style, as I said, we'll speak to it in a moment.
Hmm.
And that has never felt more like me.
Hmm.
And I lost myself after the breakup, truthfully. I didn't know who I was, what I was going to do, my business, like my motivation, even with that, because a lot of it was built on my journey of a competitor
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
results and that way of life. Had a lot of people doing photo shoots and competing, and you know, I still love it. I'm still passionate about it, don't get me wrong, but my me as a person was just moving in a different direction. So I had
Yeah.
no idea what the hell to do.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and
much
it's
of your
been like,
foundation was
yeah,
built around bodybuilding
yeah,
and this industry, wasn't it?
100%.
Like all of
Yeah,
it. We
all
spoke
of
about
it.
it, your
Yeah.
career, your interests, your participation, what
Hmm.
you consumed, like everything, every pillar of your life. If you can imagine 5 pillars of your life, every single one of them was built on that platform. So
Yeah.
it's no surprise that it took time.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
No
you
surprise.
you don't want to believe that you're kind of changing as a person. Like, God, I'm
No.
27. I know I'm still probably young, but it's like I thought my life was competing. I thought my life was, you know, even coaching long term.
Mhm.
You know, I saw myself going for a pro card. I saw myself marrying the person that I was with and having
Yeah.
kids and living in Manchester, getting a house in Manchester. Like I think it wasn't just the breakup, but you're kind of mourning just everything that you thought that you were going to be and everything that your
Hmm.
life was going to be.
Yeah.
And when that broke down, it was like, okay, what now? Like this is not actually my life anymore.
Yeah.
But you're
Yeah.
holding on to the things that you thought would be it. Like I was saying,
Hmm.
Manchester and all those things and getting back working with a coach. Immediately after my breakup as well, I had a consult call with someone being like, I'm going to be doing muscle contest next year. So I had all of these things in my head, like you
Yeah.
have this
Hmm.
future that you hope for, and it doesn't always
Yeah.
unfold that way as
No.
you evolve. So I was kind of battling that. And obviously social media is incredibly difficult, you know, when
Mm.
you've shared I started in 2016 and I've shared my whole journey, my relationship of um the competing side of things. Most of my followers
Mm,
have come through competing, obviously the podcast as well, you guys following me
mm,
in the journey. And it's very, very hard to break away from something like that when you've got a lot of eyes on you because people know you as that person.
yeah.
So that was a big, big that was super difficult for me
Mm,
and why it probably took as long as it did
yeah.
as well.
Mm,
But I suppose, moving forward, guys, like it's not so much even about me anymore. Like obviously I have these feelings, but I was holding on to the podcast for quite some time because I wanted to give it my all. But truthfully, like it's also about Jade, and what she's doing and how passionate she is about bikini and this podcast. Was it 2 years ago, Jade? Yeah, two
yeah,
years.
it was 2 years
I
in
I pitched
November.
the
I think
idea. Yeah,
we sat in that coffee shop in Ancoats probably
yeah.
around this time 2 years ago, which is
Crazy.
crazy.
I know, mad. I had
With a
just
pen and
finished my
paper.
prep. I just
Yes.
finished my last
Yeah.
prep and I
Yeah.
had this idea actually, guys. I had a podcast idea for months actually throughout the whole prep. I said I wanted a platform where we could speak about the sport, specifically
Yeah.
for bikini athletes, and just be like a news hub. And
Yeah.
everybody around me was like, yes, yes, yes. Big names in the industry that I told when I was in Texas were like, Grace, absolutely go for it. It's going to be
Mm.
amazing. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. We're going to be that platform. It's going to be sick because I was so passionate about it, at the time. So I pitched the idea to Jade. I was like, no better woman. You were around the corner from me.
Yeah.
We had prepped together, I think, around that same time or the year
Yeah.
before. So I
I
was like,
just ordered a mic as well because I was on the same wavelength. I remember speaking to you. I think we went to watch Joanne McNally, was it, at the Lowry? And I was
yeah,
like, "Oh, I've just ordered a podcast mic. I'm thinking about doing a podcast." And
yeah,
your
yeah.
eyes just lit up,
I
and
know, I
it took us a
knew.
matter of days, didn't
I
we?
know. And I
Yeah,
knew I needed somebody else. Like I could not
yeah,
have done it
same,
alone. I needed someone who had that same
drive.
passion. I
Hmm.
really, and I, like that was 2 years ago, and you had that then even still. Um, Pitched the idea. All of a sudden, we are in a coffee shop writing all of these ideas. Like, what the hell? We've gotten probably 90% of the
Yeah,
people
if
on the
not more.
podcast that we
Mhm.
had hoped for. Like, we actually ran out of people. I think we wrote so many names,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we got most of them, which
yeah.
is mental. Or
Mm.
some might even be in the pipeline, guys. So I'm sure Jade is will have no problem getting the last 10% of the
I'm going to be
names.
nagging so many people that will not change.
Really, on 110%, 110%. But yeah, it was some journey,
Mm,
those the last 2 years. And I know what this podcast is capable of. I know the type of people it can reach, the amount it can help you guys who are in the industry, girls who are getting into competing as well, like resources that Jade and I and a podcast that we just did not have when we entered it. And I think
no,
like it's
no.
going to change the game for a lot of competitors who are getting into it because it's only growing. Competing is only growing, I can imagine.
Mm,
And the more information out there, the better. And I want that for the podcast. I want it to succeed.
mm,
And I know that if I was to be one out of two, that I would not be giving my all and it would potentially hold the podcast back. And that's not what I want. And it's kind of like a relationship, isn't it? We
It-
speak about it's kind of like a breakup, but
we've had this breakup chat so many times, and I don't get any less emotional.
no, it's because it's so weird. But like,
Mm,
I think I need to be selfless. I could stay on the podcast, guys. I could sit here and chat, but I would not be myself. Probably I would not give my all to it. I would not be totally present or passionate about it. I even said this to Jade the other day. I'm trying to go back in time, when I'm on these podcasts and put myself in the 2021, the 2022 Grace's shoes and go back to that feeling, those experiences. And I'll always remember them. Oh my God, like they've taught me so much.
mm,
But when I'm on these episodes chatting to people, I have to put myself back into that version of me,
mhm.
which is just so far gone now,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
sad. And I don't want to have to constantly put myself back into that version of myself.
Mm,
When I'm trying to move away from it and grow into a new person, it would just make it so much harder.
mhm,
Um, so hopefully you guys can understand where I'm getting with that and why I want Jade to achieve. She's very much in it, and I just love seeing how passionate she is, even about the Olympia last weekend. And I think that was a big thing, wasn't it? Like Jade, I think that was kind of
Yeah,
conversation was
yeah. I
you were
don't
up
think
all
either.
night watching it, and I
Yeah.
was in bed. You know,
I
I
was on
didn't.
lives. I don't know where the
Yeah,
hell that came from.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think
I just it was very different.
it's been an eye opener for both of us as well. Because like, believe me, guys, this hasn't been something that's been in the pipeline or we even thought was going to be a thing. It was kind of a conversation that just came out of one conversation, and it was like, right, okay, maybe we need to have a look at this. And it's just not something that Grace has planned. I've planned. We had huge plans for the podcast, still do,
Mhm.
and we're still very much invested in it will always be our baby. It's an hour. We are the parents of this baby, and we will continue to be forever. But I just think it's incredibly self-aware, Grace. Honestly,
Yeah,
it's a difficult decision. Like I said, it's easy to stay with something because you still love it, you do. And even though you feel like you can't necessarily give to it the way you used to, it's not something that you dislike, don't want to do. You're
Mhm.
taking a step back, arguably against your better nature in terms of what you want to do. If you're
Mhm.
coming
Mhm.
from I don't want to use the word ego, but an ego standpoint, as in like, no, it'd be nice to carry on.
Yeah,
But instead you're taking yourself away and thinking, no, what is best for me, what is best for this platform,
yeah.
what's best for what we wanted to deliver from the start and continue to be passionate about, because that's the
Mhm.
bit that hasn't changed.
Yeah,
That passion for
100%.
what we set out to do collectively
100%.
with this platform will never change. So
No.
what you're doing is incredibly selfless, but also selfish. And I think it's important for people to understand that it is important to be selfish sometimes. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
can have such a negative connotation.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, you can't put your best foot forward if you're not pouring into yourself and not prioritizing what you
yeah,
need to do for yourself. It has a knock-on effect. What
yeah.
you can give to other things, if you're not giving to yourself first and foremost,
Yeah,
can have a knock-on effect. So yeah,
definitely.
I mean, I'm
I think as well, like for people, if anybody's in a similar situation, it doesn't even have to be about, competing, but
yeah.
like even in life, I think with like relationships and stuff, like
Mm.
we hold on to things because it's familiar.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you didn't love it, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
people have exes that they can say, oh, they still love,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
or they don't regret the time doing it, but it
No.
just no longer serves them and they need to move on, and that's perfectly okay
Yeah.
too. And I'm excited for you, Jade, and where
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of take things, and I want the listeners to be getting the best kind of information, and get the best kind of guests. And I'm so confident that you're going to be able to take it that far as well and provide them all with that.
I'm
But
certainly gonna try. I'm still gonna be messaging you, right, and being like, "What do you think of this?"
I was like, I'm happily still edit all the episodes. I just love doing the admin.
I'm just
I'm in my
honestly.
editing videography era, so I'm just like, I'll do
Well,
any of
yeah,
that.
we like. I mean, podcast, like as much as this is, I spoke to Grace about it, and we really wanted to give you the recognition that you deserved as well for the contribution that you've made up until this point and will continue to make. Like it's not like it's just going to drop off the face of the earth for you, like I know that, but the recognition of everything that you've poured into this
Hmm.
today,
Yeah,
it's so important, but equally really exciting to see where you're heading.
I know.
It really is. Do you want to
It's
share it?
crazy. Like, and I think the hardest part about sitting down to record this is obviously it's sad I'm going, but it's the
Yeah.
realization of all of these things and the change. Like, it
Yeah.
scares the shit out of me. Like,
Yeah.
so many things. Like when my relationship ended and I moved home, I was,
Mm.
what the hell? When I stepped away from competing, I'm like, what the hell? It's like sometimes your life can just take a massive turn. And when you start to realize that, you're like, oh my God, because it was my whole life for so long.
Yeah.
My relationship, nearly 8 years, competing was a
Mm.
huge chunk of that. Like,
Mm.
it's incredibly hard to like see yourself
In
changing
any
and
other way.
recognizing that. And I think that was the
Yeah.
hardest thing, was sitting down on this, being like, oh my God, that's another
Mm.
chapter, a very, very big chapter in my life. This podcast is coming to a close. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I think it's kind of the last chapter with
Mm.
competing. If I was to
Yeah.
say anything,
Yeah.
I moved away from um the restriction side of things with food,
Mhm.
with the coaching side of things, not having a coach anymore in that industry, obviously the podcast, not deciding to compete, moving away
Mhm.
from Manchester, and now my training style as well has kind of
Mm.
changed. So I think yeah, it hit me last weekend. I was like, this is the kind of last thing that I'm holding on to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's that, yeah, it's kind of finally closing. And
I've just got goosebumps. It's
I'm
it's
just like,
knowing. I've just got goosebumps. I remember saying to one of my friends once, um, letting go of things like that is kind of like opening a door,
mhm.
stepping into a dark room, closing the door, locking it, and having no idea where the light's going to come from.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
No idea.
When the lights
You're
come
in a dark room, you haven't got a bloody clue what's around you, what's coming, what could potentially hit you. And you're just hoping for a light to come on at some stage so that you've got somewhere to move towards.
on.
And I think that I'm full of goosebumps, honestly. I think
That's
it's
a good
the
analogy.
most frightening thing you could potentially do. It
Yeah,
is
no, it
like
is. And I
completely
don't think,
strip your
I think
life
I
bare.
underestimated it
Yeah.
a lot this year, guys. Oh my God, the amount of money I have invested in therapy and genuinely
Same.
oh my God.
Oh God. I
Like,
mean,
thank
time
God
for
that I
me,
took
but
a break
yeah.
from coaching this year because therapy has been a huge investment for me. And
Mm,
the bulk of what I was speaking about was kind of everything that I'm really sharing here was me changing as a person and
yeah.
navigating after this relationship, which was, as I keep saying, like a huge, huge part of my life and how I
Mhm.
changed and adapted throughout it. So I spent so much of this year in therapy working on this
Mm,
painful, painful things. And like you said,
mm.
you're waiting for that light to switch on, guys. The light was slowly switching on. It was kind of
Yeah, it's like a
that's all it
dimmer.
was.
It's
The
like a
light
dimmer.
was flickering. And then all of a sudden, when I moved home back to Dublin in July, going into September, something just changed for me.
Mm,
In a lot of ways. Like it was always kind of flickering, but I think the last couple of months, and I'm sure people have seen it on my Instagram as well, there's been a massive kind of just
shift.
realization now and shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you get that, guys, and you get that kind of light bulb moment, you get that good feeling, you need to follow it. You just
Yeah,
absolutely need to follow it. And
yeah.
what my therapist was saying is you need to recognize things that it's like you feel it in your gut, hold it, and use
Mm-hmm.
that as data and say, right,
Mm-hmm.
this is what's making me feel good. This is
Mm-hmm.
not. And that is always going to get you to where you want to be in
Yeah.
life, is being so self-aware of like what is actually serving you and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
It does take
Because
a
the
lot of
thing
work
is,
to be able to realize.
yeah, because the thing is as well, if you actually look at the losses, there hasn't really been any huge monumental losses that you haven't recovered back in some
Yeah.
fashion.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So everything that it's going to feel like a cut cord. And like, I'm talking generally speaking now as well. Like, you're always going to feel like you're cutting it and that decision's permanent.
Yeah.
But I remember listening to something, I think I mentioned it to you. Um, with any decision making, you are never going to have the 100% certainty of the outcome.
Mhm.
Never.
No.
And I've heard something about a 51% rule. So as long as you're 51% sure that that is the right decision for you, lean into it, because you're only ever going to have 100% in hindsight.
Mhm.
Looking back and reflecting, you're only ever going to know it was the right decision when you look back at
Yes.
the time and at that in that moment. All you can lean into is on a balance of probabilities that is probably the better
Yeah,
decision for
yeah,
you versus not.
yeah,
If that balance is 51% or more, lean in and go
yeah.
for it, because worst case scenario, you look back and think, oh, okay, it wasn't 51%, it was probably a 0%, but you know
Correct.
when you've
Yeah,
learned
yeah, yeah. And
something.
that's take it's time thing as well. And
Mm,
I think a lot of
mm,
people struggle even coming away from competing. They
mm,
don't know it's a very, very hard thing to do. And it
yeah.
can take time. It really, really
Mm,
can take time. And lots of bits of evidence of what makes you feel good, what doesn't. It's not going to be
mm.
just like this. I'm not doing anymore. How many people do we speak about? I was only thinking about this the other day. Like they say, I'm not competing anymore
Yeah,
straight away. And then all of a sudden they're back
we're back.
competing.
Hmm.
This decision of whatever decision we make, it's never going to be easy. Like it's going
Permanent
to take time. There's a
time.
lot of
Yeah,
things that are going to pull you in different directions, and you need to make sure that, or just be patient with yourself on that
yeah.
journey of figuring it out, I guess. But that
Yeah.
percentage thing is really, really good. Really, really
It's
good.
honestly, like I remember listening to it a couple of months back, and it has been something that stuck with me so much because I think, as generally speaking, I think as people, when we're involved in bodybuilding, we've already said it, you're so fixated on controlling what you can control. And
Yeah.
I think when it comes to dealing with things that you can't control, specific, we've both been in situations over the last year, 2 years, where we've been thrown into the fire, quite literally. And when you can't control things like that, I think we lean into a need to try and control the outcome or
Mhm.
control
Yeah.
how we show up. And I think stepping back from that and having been faced with collectively between the two of us things that we simply cannot control or manage, looking for that slight lean, like going internal, going inside, looking at what we can do, what's going to make us feel better, and then moving from that point. You're not always going to get it right
Yeah.
either. You're not,
Yeah.
but very few decisions in this lifetime are ever going to be 100% permanent. There's always, and like I said, the feedback in terms of what you can get back, you've got a different training style now. Your relationship, albeit broken down, you're in a good place. And it's like there's things that you reap back from
Yeah.
making decisions
Even the
that might
community
feel
thing.
like you'll never see it again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So true. And I think
mm,
the community thing was huge for me. And I
yeah.
think a lot of people can relate that with the bodybuilding industry is you build a lot of friends and
Mm-hmm.
amazing, amazing, that you can have these people to rely on, and just that the industry as a whole. And that's what I suppose any sport is all about, isn't it? It's all
Yeah.
about community and making you
Yeah.
feel like you belong.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was getting out of it, like that was the hardest thing for me. I was losing my people. I was losing
Yeah.
people, who listen to the
Mm-hmm.
podcast, just friends in the industry as well. And that's a really, really hard thing to let go of and
Mm-hmm.
understand like, okay, right, I need to find my new tribe now because
My
that's what it is.
people.
Like
Yeah.
maybe people
Yeah.
call it cults, I don't know, but it's like it's finding your tribe of people because you've a common
Mm-hmm.
interest.
Yeah.
And when you kind
Yeah.
of lose that interest, it's like, oh my God, like how am I going to meet people now? And
Yeah.
that's why I found Manchester really, really hard and moving home so refreshing is because I just started this new training style. I've met new people and just expanded those that I talk to and what
Mm-hmm.
we talk about as well. And
Yeah.
I think that was a huge, huge thing. And I'm sure anybody who's listening who is feeling that same way about, not competing anymore, that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge part of it for most people, I think,
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
friendships that
Yeah.
they've made and
Mm-hmm.
the feeling that their Instagram
Belong.
will go down, that
Mm-hmm.
not going to be interested in them anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, that's it, it's it's
Yeah.
it's breaking away from that as well. But
It's that
it
sense of
does take
belonging.
time, and I think,
Everybody
yeah,
wants it. Everyone wants to feel like they are surrounded by people that understand them,
yeah,
what makes them tick. And it's a sacrifice. But again, Grace, you're not stepping away from all of that. Some,
yeah,
yeah, albeit you may have like detached from just because foundationally that might be what it was based on. But again, I mean, I'm not going
no, I
anywhere.
know. And I think like I
Oh,
still love following like a good few.
yeah.
There's people that are friends. Like it's not that I have this massive hatred. Like I'm definitely not that person who, you like
We all
obviously I've
know.
unfollowed some people are muted, some people that, I don't need to see their check-ins, but my
Yeah.
friends, that I still love to support and you guys, like it's still important to me to
Important.
support that. It's
Yeah.
just from an outsider point of view.
Mm-hmm.
The level of things that I consume now and what I listen to. And I suppose that leading into the podcast, like I wouldn't have much to give on this,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be up to
Yeah.
date with things. So yeah, I want to stop rambling because I feel like people would be bored of it. But also,
No,
if
no.
anybody is in the same position and wants to like chat more about this,
Mm-hmm.
um, my DMs are always open
Mm-hmm.
to chat about it and hopefully like me sharing the rawness of this all and how this last year has been. It does actually help people and you can relate to it
Yeah.
in some way. Maybe you guys saw it coming, maybe not. Maybe you've seen it on the episodes or on my Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully you guys can support this next step in my journey as well and the training
Yes.
that I'm doing because I'm a
Yes.
hyper
How, I
trainer.
don't I don't know how you're running. Like, can we just address that,
Oh my God,
please?
stop.
How are
Literally.
you doing that?
I went from being never a runner, I was a bodybuilder, like that was my
Mm.
thing. And now I'm
Bodybuilders
like,
don't run,
right,
right?
yeah, bodybuilders do not run. Like that is such like an ick in the bodybuilding industry. It's like you don't
Mm.
run, you just don't.
Right. I felt
It's
so
like,
unreasonable.
yeah,
For like not thinking it of other people, but I just thought, no, but nobody does it. Like,
no,
is it a
bodybuilders
thing?
do not run,
Is
and
it?
people who do like the CrossFit and stuff, like
Mm.
they don't have the same ego and vanity as
Yeah.
bodybuilders do. Like they just clash. They just absolutely clash. And like I did burpees the other day, and I was like, wow, how much my life has changed because I used to slag the shit out of burpees. Like, slag the shit out of them. Like me and my ex would just like take the piss out of that kind of training all the time,
Yeah.
functional
Mm.
fitness. And I'm like, here I am now. Like, but
Being
it just goes to
humbled.
show that like
Yeah.
how much you can change and how much your opinions can change. And I think
Yeah.
you can be very, very biased
Yes.
in that industry. And it's
Yes.
like, this
Yeah.
works, this doesn't
Yeah.
work, this is
Mhm.
stupid, this is better. And it's just not like that. And that's not what fitness is about, really, is it?
No.
Like, it's
No.
about enjoyment, it's about moving your body, challenging yourself.
Yeah.
Like, what seems stupid to a bodybuilder is not stupid to somebody else.
No, no.
Like, but people find the way. I look back at some of the bodybuilder training, I'm like, oh my God, like, why did I spend so long just like doing the same exercise, the same reps? And it's like I look back and I'm like, oh, that's so mad. But when you're in it,
It
that's
makes
so
sense.
normal. It
Yeah.
makes
So
sense. So
it's
it's like
all
think
to
you
do
like you
with
need to be open to
perspective.
different styles of training as well. And,
Yeah.
and as I get older, I just realize you can't judge how other people train. And
No, no.
I judge that a lot.
Mm. I think
So yeah.
culturally, like everybody has them. Well, we do have fitness cultures, let's face it. If it's not a bodybuilder, it's a CrossFitter. If it's not CrossFitter, it's somebody who's a marathon runner or triathlon
Mhm.
trainer. Everybody thinks that what they're doing is best. I think the best thing that you could ever learn is that you are a small part of one big little
Oh
puddle,
yeah.
and there's so many
So
puddles,
many, yeah, but
and
I
you
think
can jump
everybody's
in whatever
bodybuilding.
puddle you want and jump back out and go swimming in another, and it
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
doesn't,
yeah, yeah.
like, that's the beauty of it. And I think
Crazy, yeah.
it's wild, isn't it, that when you actually perspectively like come out, zoom out
Oh.
from where you've been, and you're like, oh.
There's so much more to bodybuilding, but like
Yeah,
when you're bodybuilding, it's everything.
yeah.
And it's the most impressive thing. But now the most impressive thing to me is people who are doing like high rocks competitions or
Mm.
running, 20K and then doing a load of, weights as well. I'm like, your perspective totally changed. You zoom out and you're like,
Changes.
oh my
Yeah.
God, there's so many other things and incredible things that people
Mm.
are doing with their fitness that
Hmm.
require same levels of discipline. It's just a
Yeah.
little bit different, but it's the
Yeah.
same premise, it's
Principles
discipline,
are the
it's
same.
hard work,
Yeah.
it's suffering,
Mhm.
it's all the same thing, and that's what it's
Mm.
about, you want that kind of
And
feeling.
that's what, I
And
mean, we've spoken about it. That's what we got into bodybuilding for,
yeah,
like that competitive. If you look at the principles of why we actually bodybuild and why we've chosen that outlet over another outlet, and it doesn't really matter what
mhm,
outlet it is. Principally, it's the challenge, it's the discipline, it's the fortitude, it's that tenacity to go after
mhm,
something that is
mhm.
difficult.
Yeah,
We've spoken about it so many times about how transferable that is, and you are living proof that it's
yeah, yeah,
transferable. You're transferring it into
100%.
completely different avenues, and
And it's just about,
that's
okay, right,
okay.
which sport like aligns with
Mm.
values, like as
Yeah,
well. Like to
yeah, yeah.
me, competing at the time, like in line with that, I was in a relationship. I wasn't going out, I could eat that way. I was
Mm.
very, very focused on my physique. And now, not in a relationship. I'm going out
Mm.
a little bit more and don't really care about what my body looks like. So this sport and this what I'm doing aligns with that.
Yes,
I'm trying
exactly.
to
Yeah.
meet new people. Like I'm
Mm.
genuinely trying to meet new people, and
Mm.
doing what I'm doing now is an amazing community, and you do things as teams and stuff like that. It's not on your own.
Mhm.
And I was dealing with a lot of loneliness this year. So like my values were to meet people and do all of that. So my training style
Shifted.
just aligns with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
I want to be fitter,
Mm.
um, and get back into running, which I used to do a lot of, and playing sport, which I did this year as well.
Mhm.
So, that's fulfilled that need as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. It makes all of
So
it
it,
makes sense.
yeah,
It
it
genuinely
does. I
does.
think we say it makes sense, but going through it and going through that
Mm.
bit, or anybody's going through change, whatever it
Yeah.
might be, like yeah, it seems obvious when you get there, but it's also like it does take
Hindsight.
time.
Yeah. Hindsight. The 51% rule, guys. If you take
Yeah,
anything from this,
yeah,
51% rule,
yeah.
honestly.
I know.
So, in terms of what's next, I mean, podcast wise, guys, this podcast is not going anywhere. Grace and I have agreed wholeheartedly that this platform still matters equally
So
as much as it
we
did.
need those guests. I'm going to be
Yeah.
on your case about getting the get
Oh, do
on.
not. Yeah, I'll
And
deliver. I
the
swear.
growth
I'm not
of
going to let
it
this
and,
drop.
what's to come. And
Mm.
I know Jade's going to smash it, coming into obviously 2025. With everything that's going on, like I've no doubt she's going to get there, and I'm going to be keeping a close eye on it.
Yeah.
But
I think given the investment that we both made,
yeah,
believe me, the mantle's huge. It felt very big this morning. I was like, oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah,
but I've got this to carry. But in terms of what my commitment is to what we built, Grace,
yeah,
like that's the commitment. Like, I
yeah,
think
for sure.
fundamentally, I won't let this fail for both of us,
No, no,
simply
no,
put.
no,
So we
no.
created it, and we will
Too good.
continue
It's
to.
too good. Too good
Yeah.
to lose.
I like it.
But what's
But
next? I
what's next for
think
you? What's next for you?
I want
What's
to push
coming?
on with my training. I don't want to
Mhm.
talk too much about myself because people are probably bored at this stage. I'm like, oh my God, I would totally click off. I Yeah, I'm going to be doing a little bit more of my training, which you guys can follow along on my Instagram. It's Grace Mannion
Mhm.
_. Doing more like high rocks running. Sorry, functional fitness kind of thing. So if you
Mm.
guys are interested in following that, you can find me on Instagram. And I've also set up a videography business, which is, a career change kind of passion project, hobby
Hmm.
that I'm doing on the side as well as coaching. But I'm loving it. So you can follow my media page, which is Impact Media. And if anybody is in Ireland and needs content recorded, I'm your gal, for
Hmm.
whatever reason. But I'm looking forward to growing that as
It's
well.
exciting. Yeah.
And probably staying in Ireland. That's one thing that I've realized this year is that without sounding too cringy to end this podcast, happiness, you cannot chase it in a place. It's a feeling that you get inside. And I think
Yeah,
I was running around, where will I live? I'll go here, I'll go there. And actually it needs to be found inside, as cringy as that is. And I
it
was
is
there.
so goddamn
I'm sure you can
true.
put that in a better
So,
way, but like
like,
I internally
mm,
I was not happy, but I
mhm,
was trying to find happiness in other things. And
yeah.
it's taken me a lot of work to get to the place where I'm like, right, it has to be in me, not where I'm
Mhm,
living.
mhm.
So I probably will be in Dublin for a while. Um we'll see where that
Hopefully
goes.
visiting Manchester.
But I'll be over to Manchester. Don't you worry, we're going to. We're heading back.
Yes, we are. You girls love a
But
two-step as well,
yeah, yeah,
okay?
yeah. I know. It's great for the output, I have to say. God.
Literally.
But yeah, that's my next step, guys. You can follow along my journey.
Yeah, please do.
And yeah, like make sure to continue supporting the podcast. And as I said, if you guys have any questions or you want to reach out, I'd love to hear from you. And hopefully, I don't know if anybody really cares. I'm getting to the end of this. I'm like, I actually don't even think anybody cares. They're like, just get the guests on. Get the guests
I
on. I
care.
don't care
We
that Grace
care.
is gone.
Yeah, I think from a community standpoint, I think it takes us back. In terms of the feedback we've always had, really,
Yeah.
but we continue to get feedback, we continue to
Yeah.
get investment. So people do care.
Yeah.
People
Oh,
do care,
God.
and like I said, this was a matter of not only giving people an insight into where you're at right now, but appreciating everything that you've poured into this,
Yeah.
because it's been an awful lot, guys. Like, this hasn't been easy to build
No,
this platform to where it is right now. Grace and I have poured
quite a lot of
everything in,
time and
a lot of time, energy,
everything. Yeah.
commitment, passion. Like, it's harder than it looks.
No.
So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jade. And I appreciate having this little podcast to see me
Yeah.
out. I feel like it's probably the best thing to
Yeah.
do. But much love, guys, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for just, I suppose, supporting us and Jade and making us see what is possible. And I
Mm.
hope that, the last 2 years with the questions and my sense of humor and just my journey as well alongside that has given you guys value. And yeah, all the best.
We
Much
will love
love.
you and miss you.
Try not to cry now when this is finished. Hey
No,
guys, what are you going to say at the start of the podcast?
I don't
Just like, and this
know.
is your host script. I mean,
Hi. um,
just Jade again. No, joking.
Honestly, yeah, I'm back. I'm so sorry. I
Still
don't even
hurting
know
from
how
my
this is gonna
breakup. No,
run.
joking.
This is an adjustment,
Oh,
guys. This feels like a breakup.
oh. Well, chat to you soon, guys. Well, Jade will chat to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Won't catch you in the next one. Oh.